Autistic monotropism and dissociative identity disorder, or DID. Welcome to this Autistic Cells video, which will explore monotropism and how this may relate to DID. What is autistic monotropism, and is there a relationship between monotropism and dissociative identity disorder, or DID? I recently discovered an autistic-led theory of autism called monotropism. The theory resonated with me, and I decided to think about it more, particularly in terms of its relationship to dissociative identity disorder, and whether me being monotropic could have had an influence on me developing alters in order to cope with life. To those not familiar with my channel, my name is Naomi, and I am formally diagnosed as both autistic and DID. I am the host, and I have over 20 alters. Our collective name is Autistic Selves. Please remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to be notified when we publish new videos. We also appreciate donations, which can be made via our designated fundraising page and enable us to continue making videos and to continue blogging on our other social media sites. Autistic monotropism and dissociative identity disorder, or DID. What is monotropism? Monotropism is the idea that some brains have evolved to only be able to pay attention to one thing at a time. A polytropic brain is able to focus on several things at the same time. Who developed this theory? The theory was originally developed by three autistic researchers, Wen Lawson, Dinah Murray and Mike Lesser in 2005. They feel it explains many of the behaviours seen in autism. For example, autistic people tend to be hyper-focused with intense interests and find it difficult to adapt to change. Is it possible that I developed alters to cope with being monotropic? I feel monotropism could partially account for why I unconsciously developed alters as a young child and why I continue to do so today. As I get to know my alters more and to understand more about why I have them, I observe that mostly each alter has come into being to cope with something specific that I cannot cope with on my own. For example, my emotions are held by different alters. I have one alter, Angela, who mainly holds anger on behalf of everyone else in our system. I also have alters that have specific skills that others don't have. For example, Ariella is able to draw, Julie is able to write, Melody plays the piano, and Rachel runs. This way of compartmentalizing ourselves into specific parts works well for us. It makes our life feel less confusing. Each alter can get very focused and very intense about whatever they are responsible for, and then not have to worry about anything outside of this area. As we have a monotropic brain, we find multitasking very difficult and stressful. Dividing our life as a whole into sections can enable us as a whole system to complete several tasks. They are just done by different alters, and so we are better able to manage our very complicated life. Our life is too complicated for us to manage without having alters because of the many different roles it contains. For example, we are a wife, a mother, and also have multiple interests, each of which we pursue with an extreme amount of intensity. We feel that without alters, we would not be able to achieve as much because we would only be able to pursue one or two interests with the amount of passion that is required. As I live my life through alters, each alter can focus exclusively on their area of speciality, and this works better for us as a whole. In the present time, I mostly find this works well, especially now that I am aware of having alters and understand that this is how I live my life and why. However, before I was aware of having alters, switching between different people was confusing. And although it enabled me to survive and cope with events I couldn't know about, I don't think I managed life as well as I do today. Nowadays, we are all aware of each other and we understand, support and respect each other. We know that different alters need time to complete the tasks they need to do. We used to fight with each other. Each alter wanted to be the only one and to be the only one fronting. Ultimately, this meant that none of us could complete anything. The system as a whole wasn't functioning and we were stuck in negative behaviour that made our collective lives worse, not better. Now that we fight less, we can negotiate with each other, support each other, and our system functions better. Are other people with DID also monotropic? We feel our DID is different to typical DID because we are also autistic and monotropic. Our DID has, in part, evolved to enable us to interact with the world in a way that our monotropic brain can cope with. We feel that DID in someone with a monotropic brain might be different to someone who has a polytropic brain. We hypothesize that the alters in someone who is not monotropic would be less organised than ours. Our alters are very function orientated, with each one holding different skills and emotions, and usually being responsible for a single aspect of our collective lives. Some of our alters hold traditional trauma and were created to cope with experiences we found too difficult to manage. We feel that these alters are more akin to the alters others with DID seem to have. We feel that the alters we have evolved because we have a monotropic brain are different to typical alters. If I am parented or educated without regard for my monotropism, can this be damaging, and if so, why? I feel that growing up with a monotropic brain can be difficult when school and parents do not understand how a person's brain is working. For example, asking me to suddenly switch task and move from something that I am engrossed in to focusing on something new is physically impossible for me. A polytropic brain can manage this transition more smoothly, but for me, I need time to come away from the tasks I am interested in and then time to engage with the new task. As a child, I was eager to please and would try my hardest to comply with the demands adults placed on me. I literally would utilise another alter to enable me to stop the task I was involved in and move quickly to the new task the adult wished me now to focus on. I had no awareness I was doing this at the time, but as I get to know my alters and they tell me their stories, I understand that this was what I did in order to comply with the everyday demands made on me and which my monotropic brain could not cope with. With my own children, who were both autistic, I instinctively understood, even before I knew that they were autistic, that if they were very busy with one activity, I couldn't just make them stop that activity in an instant. I gave them the time they needed, even when this meant they would be late for the new activity. Teachers would cause distress by not allowing the time needed and insisting on immediate obedience, later complaining to me and describing the behaviour as non-compliant. This is not the case. According to the theory of monotropism, there is a neurological reason for why an autistic person is unable to just shift gears at a moment's notice and to suit the needs of someone else. I do think that teachers having these expectations can be damaging. It is important for schools to understand and respect a child's neurology and to have realistic expectations. Is monotropism something I can change, something that can be cured? I do not believe my brain can be wired differently to become polytropic. This is how my brain works, and it cannot be changed nor cured. And why would it need to be? What if the neuromajority were monotropic? Would it be such a difficulty then? I believe the important thing is to understand how the brain is working and adapt our expectations according to what is realistic, given the unique wiring of the individual's brain. Ultimately, accepting that my children will be unable to switch rapidly between tasks has made my parenting of them far more enjoyable and far less frustrating. Does being monotropic predispose me to developing alters or DID? I feel that being monotropic is related to my developing alters. When I was being made to rapidly switch tasks, my brain unconsciously sought a creative solution, that of creating an entirely different persona to deal with the situation. I feel the way my alters present is in itself very monotropic in feel. Each alter has their own intense interest and when fronting will be hyper-focused and enter a flow state. I feel I am made up of not just many alters, but many monotropic alters. I am not sure that people who are DID but not autistic have alters that present in the same way as mine do. If being monotropic predisposes people to developing DID, why aren't all autistic people DID? In our opinion, different people develop different strategies to cope with life. For me, my solution was to develop alters without knowing I was doing this. Other autistic people will find other solutions. Some autistic people do also have DID, but not all autistic people will be DID, and not all people with DID will be autistic. I feel I was predisposed to develop DID, but that if I had been parented differently and understood as a child, then I may never have developed alters as I did. Does switching between alters to complete tasks effectively make me polytropic? In the current time, most alters in our system are aware of each other, and we live our everyday life switching between alters, choosing the alter that is most appropriate for a given situation. We are also able to co-front, which is when we have a few alters near the front at the same time. The alters are also able to have conversations and debates with each other. This effectively means that we are able to move more quickly between tasks in a similar way to what we imagine a polytropic person would be able to do. However, our brain still remains monotropic and each alter is monotropic. Our ability to switch into a different alter to complete tasks is, to us, a similar process to when an autistic person will mask to appear neurotypical. Just as we can't mask long-term without having consequences such as fatigue, we can't switch between alters continuously without it making us unwell. Switching alters affects us physiologically. For example, we will feel sick and dizzy when we switch a lot. So we need to mostly be in an environment in which we can genuinely cope and where we don't need to mask or switch into different alters in order to survive. When we were a child, we had no awareness that we were a system and would create new alters and switch between parts without awareness. We were unconsciously adapting to the expectation that we would respond to the world as if we were polytropic. In the short term, it won us favour with our family and teachers. However, in the long term, this is not a sustainable way to live, and it is important that those around the monotropic person make adaptations to the environment to help the person function. What strategies are helpful when supporting a person with a monotropic brain? Give the person time to move between activities. Not immediately finishing one task and moving on to another isn't defiance or the person being difficult. It is because of how the brain is wired. Allow the person time to follow their interests and accept that they may be very intense and focused. When a person is very engaged in an activity, they may not hear you when you speak to them. They are not deliberately ignoring you. They are just very engrossed in the task and haven't processed that you are there. Give one instruction at a time. Multitasking is difficult for monotropic brains. Thank you for watching this Autistic Selves video, which explores the autistic-led theory of monotropism and how it relates to our diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder. We hope you have found our video helpful and will share it with others. Please also remember to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our other social media sites, and if you can afford to do so, consider making a donation via our fundraising page. Thank you for your support. Naomi and everyone at Autistic Selves.